Kamala Harris showing a narrow 2-point lead over former President Donald Trump that is well within the margin of error. Our political editor, Dennis Welch, is here now to break down those numbers.
Yeah, and when you say within the margin of error, what you're basically saying, statistically, it's a dead heat. Now, Arizona's family commissioned the survey in partnership with the local public affairs firm, HighGround, and it reaffirms what we've been seeing so far, that Arizona's 11 electoral college votes, which could determine who wins the White House, are still very much in play for both candidates.
Here are the top-line numbers. They reveal Harris leading Trump 47% to 45%. The results also reveal that 45% of those surveyed say they've already made up their mind to vote for Harris, while 41% say they will definitely be voting for Trump.
I think one of the biggest takeaways here is that the race is very close and getting closer. We've seen some surveys where Trump has a narrow lead. We've seen others where Harris has a slight lead. All of them have been within the margin of error.
Paul Bentz is the longtime Arizona pollster who conducted the survey commissioned by Arizona's family. His data reveals that Harris is doing a better job convincing voters to cross party lines. At this point, the vice president has convinced more than 12% of likely Republican voters to support her. On the other hand, Trump has only managed to convince 1.7% of Democratic voters to back his candidacy. The two candidates are also evenly split with voters who are unaffiliated with any party, while Trump is leading by double digits with independents.
What we're really seeing is that the Democrats are much more solidified behind their candidate. They very much circled the wagons, whereas Republicans are still struggling internally with at least a portion of their party.
Harris is also doing better than expected with voters 65 years and older. The two candidates are evenly split at 48% among this reliably Republican bloc. And like the previous two presidential cycles, Trump is doing much better in rural parts of the state than Harris, while the VP leads in Arizona's two most populous counties, Maricopa and Pima.
And this survey was conducted at the end of last week. Another interesting data point here is the gender gap, with Harris winning more than 52% of female voters to Trump's 40%, while Trump is winning over 50% of male voters to Harris's 42%. Guys?
We've been saying for a long time it's going to come down to a couple 100,000 voters in 7 swing states. Of course, Arizona very pivotal. And the last presidential race was decided by like 10.5 thousand here in Arizona.
Yeah, and if you look at the data here, maybe it's not surprising, but 86% are pretty much made up.
They're locked in.
They're locked in, so 14% out there. Maybe could be movable, but it's going to be very close. We knew that. I know the election is a little over a month away, but remember, early voting starts next week, so we're already in the middle of this.
And Dennis, these were likely voters, not just registered voters, right?
Yeah, these were picked by basically on how often they vote. These are people who are reliable voters out there. They wanted to get a sense of who are they supporting, how are they voting, what's going to happen with them. Now, that does leave open some room. Could there be an influx of new voters out there? Have Republicans identified voters who haven't typically voted in the last election cycle or the last couple? Could Democrats do the same thing? There's always a lot of questions to be answered. Well, with these polls, there's always things you can look at with a little suspicion, just like every poll. But as politicians have told me for years, decades now, the only poll that matters is in November.
Yeah. Take it to the bank.
Less than 20%.
They call this a snapshot in time, which is what it is. We
Yeah.
like it. It's interesting to see the breakdown. Dennis, thank you.